Final Fantasy X. A lot of you have been waiting for this because I have a Final Fantasy X Let's Play, as well as I have a 9, a 4, and a 6. And a 7 Let's Play. So I did Let's Plays of all those. They're kind of dated, and I'll probably revise them with new ones. Maybe one a year, play renew one Final Fantasy game a year, and then be done with it. Or just start the ones that I haven't done, and then as I finish those, I'll renew the other ones. Final Fantasy X. Okay, this is a very divided game. There's a lot of people that hate this game, for various reasons. And Spoony. There's a guy named Spoony who really hates this game. There are other RPG fanatics who really hate this game, and I see why they hate it. I think it's a little immature to just write it off for that. Okay, I will stand by that. It is immature to write it off for that. Because yeah, there are plot holes in the story. And yeah, the villain is absolute shit. And there's a lot of things they could have done differently to make it a great game. There's a lot of things they could have done. But they didn't do it. Music and visual, obviously, big upgrade. It's always upgrade, okay? In most cases, it's always an upgrade. The story is linear, but you know what? I'm sorry, Spoony. I like your videos. You seem like a pretty cool guy. It's not any more linear than a Grandia game. It's not any more linear than Final Fantasy IV. It's not any more linear than fucking Final Fantasy IX. It's not any more linear than most RPG games. The only difference, realistically, is that you cannot openly explore the world on an overview map. Okay, bottom line. But to sit there and literally belch out that the game is so linear that it's boring is pretty narrow-minded. Because it's not. It's not any less linear than Final Fantasy VI or 7 for that matter. Because what did you do when you left Midgard? You went to that little town that you saw on the way to the Chocobo Ranch. Then you went to the Chocobo Ranch. You went through the marsh to avoid the snake fucker. You went into the mountain area. Then you came out of the mountain area and made your way to Nibelheim. And then you made your way to Rocket Town. You still went to places in a ridiculously specific order. The only difference was I didn't have to wander through an overworld to do it. Now, you can make the argument that, well, because you don't have an overworld, you don't get to explore. Oh, please. That's total crap. There's nothing to see on the overworld except the towns as you come up to them. Yes, there's a bit of feeling that is good, and you feel like you're accomplishing more when you walk there, but I don't buy it. I don't buy that that's a reason to write a game off entirely, which him and other reviewers don't write off entirely for that reason, but they complain about it. Now, is there as much open world side content as the others? Absolutely not. By end game, when you have the airship, the game's kind of a total snooze fest, and they should have been able to do more with that, and they fucking didn't, and there's no excuse for that. Probably in an effort to keep it on one disc, probably, but there's no excuse for that. We don't care how many discs your game takes. We want to play a good fucking game. Put good content. Put lots of content in it. We love that. Please make it good content too. That's relevant to the story and relative to character development, and you'll go far. But when you put dodge 200 lightning bolts in there, you're a fucking asshole. You're useless, you're a piece of shit, and it's a stupid fucking side quest for something that is actually really cool and worth trying to get. But that is not worth it. The Chocobo racing, not the racing necessarily, but the trials. Fuck you and the horse you came on, that's stupid too. Blitzball. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I thought it was okay. I wouldn't play Final Fantasy X just to play Blitzball. And if you've seen my Let's Play of Final Fantasy X, you see that I kind of do it really well. My setup worked. I was able to accomplish what I needed to accomplish with it, bottom line. Killing a whole bunch of monsters throughout every area of the game for Orange. I mean, these are side quests that are silly. I wanted to see character development with these side quests. I wanted to see something interesting. And you just gave me shit to keep me busy, to fill another 10 hours of gameplay, because it takes about that long to do most of that stuff in reality. Yeah, that's really what they did. It was filler. It was filler to waste time to pad the rest of the game. Yes, I agree with people who hate those mini games. They were pointless. They added nothing to the game other than a major headache. Were the weapons worth it? No, because you could beat the game without them and kind of craft your own to be near as good as that just through item gathering, which in a sense is what I did for, as an example, that's exactly what I did for Lulu. Okay? Period. Alright, so the battle system in the sphere grid, I don't see that many problems with it, really, because you're developing a character like you've seen them develop in other games, but you're seeing it visually and choosing what things you want to focus on when paths kind of split for the small periods that they split. As far as the sphere grid is concerned, some people hated it because every time I got a sphere, I had to go into the sphere grid. And it's like, no, you didn't. You see that in my Let's Play. I wait like 4 or 5 fucking sphere levels before I actually do anything with them. And that's what a lot of people kind of did. You didn't just gain 1 sphere level. You just gained them in sets of 3, or you gained them in sets of 8 or 5, and then you did it because then you got some significant, and you felt significant change in your character. And so the sphere grid is whatever, but what happens is that when characters start going down other paths, you still have your characters fitting archetypes. You have Yuna, you have Lulu, both playing casters. You have Riku's kind of in the middle with Kimari, and then you have Titus, Waka, and Orin as your linemen, as I like to call them, or as your frontliners. And that's the game in presentation in a nutshell. Orin is slow, Titus is fast. Orin hits hard, Titus doesn't hit as hard. Obviously, when they finish, you have them go down each other's path. Waka, it's up to you, but he benefits either going down Orin's path or Titus's. I usually send him down Orin's because by the end of his sphere grid, he's fast enough. Kimari, fuck if I know. Jesus. He's the master of nothing, and he excels at nothing. I send him down Titus's path so I have another person to cast Haste and Hastka. Period. And I use him for his rages, Ronzo rages. Riku, broken as hell once you learn the mixture combinations, and that's all she ever amounts to. You send her down Orin's path if you want damage, though I try to make a quasi-mage healer out of her. If you follow my Let's Play, you know I give Yuna all of the Thundara's spells with all the Black Mage spheres as soon as I can do that. Because she out-damages Lulu at the same sphere level. Like, almost 400 damage more. And it gives her versatility. It makes me want to use her in battle. To the point where people started saying to me, and even in private messages, you never summon. I don't need to. Yuna does more damage with black magic than our fucking summon does unless I'm overdriving, and that's a waste of time. I'll save that for a boss fight, for crying out loud. And I did. Lulu was kind of the weakest link, but once you sent her down Yuna's path, I threw her kind of in the middle of the path, though I gave her some of the stronger healing spells. I did throw her in the middle of the path for a good reason, because you get a lot of the mage bonuses and the healing bonuses and whatnot. So I thought it was fine, but the characters like in 7, which I didn't mention, they all start playing the same. Or they all start playing the same regardless of who you're using. Excluding their overdrives, there's no really difference between them based other than what they have equipped and their overdrives. You can literally fit them to all be the same. Final Fantasy VIII falls into archetypes again. You have your tanks, your middle guys, and you have your casters. And it works. It's been done before. It's been done better. So that is what it is. The story. Okay. The story is good. Ish. It had potential. It did a lot of things right. But for every one single thing it did right, it did something horribly wrong. horribly wrong. Titus is a shitty protagonist. He sucks, but at least he's not Squall. At least he's not as emotionally deprived and ridiculous as Cloud is at times. He's a little bit more tolerable, but God, his voice actor was driving me fucking up the wall. Oh. And his presence in the story was there to really just explain everything to us. He didn't need to be there. And I always tell people, if you got rid of Jecht, and spoilers, if you got rid of Jecht and you got rid of Squall, okay, if you did that much, okay, let's say you did that much, and you literally replace them with Yuna as your lead character, and you make Yuna's father Sin. You sold me a lot better. You have more going on for her, because Yuna is a much more interesting character. Her dilemma internally is already pretty large. That's just fucking icing on the cake if she found out that was her father. You know. So there's a bigger presence. That alone just could have made a better story. And this is where I do agree with people who don't like Final Fantasy X. Protagonist is shit. Okay? And there were so many things they could have done in place of the Jecht Titus dealie that I still wish that they kind of did that. And you could have gotten rid of Wakka too, but I understand his presence. I don't like Wakka, but I do love the voice actor, but I don't like the character. And you could have done without him, because Lulu covers the same territory. Her presence in that story covers the same viewpoint as Wakka, but Wakka has his little pissing matches when he's being questioned about Yevon, We know Lulu feels the same way, and when he rages out at people or snaps at people, Lulu kind of says what needs to be said, and we could have just dealt with what Lulu said. Would have been much easier, would have been much happier. I would have been happy, you would have been happy, and then we wouldn't have had to hear Wakka try to dramatize it any further. Lulu was so good at explaining things. Why not let her explain that viewpoint? But whatever. I mean, some people like Wakka, and that's fine. Though his ability to throw a blitzball the way he does leaves room for question on the realm of physics. But it's a fantasy game. Fuck it, I'm not going to get into that. Kimari Ronzo's presence, not really necessary, but it is better value presence than maybe Walker or Titus. Auron, obviously there as the guide. Okay, he was Virgil guiding Dante through hell. Or Virgil, in this case, Auron guiding Yuna through her pilgrimage for her to find out the truth herself. Yeah, he could have told her everything from the beginning. But would that have changed what she set out to do is debatable. Very morally and ethically debatable, which is why the pilgrimage had to happen. For her to see the world for herself and come to her own conclusions. And that's good story writing. Riku. Unnecessary at times, but bridged the two cultures a bit. And, the one thing with Riku is, number one, she's a necessary character because she fits a stereotype of games. She fit that kind of anime-like persona that people in Japan and in the US wanted to see. I don't like that character, but it doesn't mean that she's a bad character. And she's such an interesting character. She won an award for being that character and how she was played, acted, and designed. So, that's a personal preference. And if you like Riku, you should be proud that you like Riku, because she's obviously a good character, regardless of whether or not I like her. And she needs to be in the story. The one thing that pissed me off significantly was that she was Yuna's cousin, and nobody ever made a big deal about it. Wakka should have been so fucking furious. He should have been shitting thunderbolts and, raging out concentrated, sins from his mouth. Okay? In cursing for not knowing. And then for them being related, he should have started developing a stigma towards Yuna. He should have started, distancing himself from Yuna as soon as he found out they were fucking related. I mean, how could you overlook that or just treat it as if it's not a big deal? It could have been much more drawn out in the story, and it would have been interesting. It would have been colorful. It would have made Waka's presence a little bit more valid for his bigotry towards, Al Bhed. That's something you can work with, and you didn't follow through on it. Shame on you, motherfucker. Shame on you. Fuck you. Okay. But that's trivial. It didn't overly affect the story, but it would have significantly helped develop the characters better. So, yeah. Anyway, moving along. Villains. I like Sin. I don't like Jecht. I like Sin. The concept of Sin. A voiceless antagonist who goes around butt-raping everything in its path. That was something new for the franchise that they've never really done before. And it worked. For all intensive purposes, in the world of Spira, that's a really good villain. That's a great villain. That's a villain I want to go beat. That's a villain I can get behind. That's a mountain I gotta climb, and I gotta shove my fist in its face. That is an accomplishment to try and conquer. Seymour Guano. Or Guado. I always say Shipmore Guano when I think of Seymour, because Seymour. Oh, Seymour. Oh, my God. Okay, where do I begin? Fucking hate you, Seymour. I really do. He's not a... Okay, so when you first meet Seymour, I looked at him and I was like, okay, I guess that's the way villains in this world look like. I can accept that. I guess I can accept that. And then he spoke. And then I felt like I was being talked to by Winnie the Pooh. Like an evil, if I closed my eyes as he spoke, it was an evil Winnie the Pooh trying to murder me. And he kind of faded in and out of working. I'm going to tell you why he's bad in a moment. When he dies, and when you fight... Okay, when he dies at Makalani Temple... Spoilers! When he dies at Makalani Temple... Okay, that was okay. I was okay with him until that moment. Even at the wedding, when he kind of lived on through sheer determination, like Orin does at the end of the game, you find out that people can do this. Okay, I let that slide. I said, okay, you know what? When I got to the end of the game, I said, you know what? When I looked back at what the game was, I said, that works. Okay, fine. He goes and tries to marry Yuna as a dead person, as a zombie, or as the spiritual determination manifesting into the real world. Okay, I can get behind that. I can get behind that. I understand what they were doing, and it works within the realms of their world, in the confines of their world. And it worked. It worked, and it was a cool scene. It was really big. It was a lot of passion, drama driven into that whole wedding scene. Anything after the wedding scene was bullshit. It was forced. It was shoehorned. They were trying to push a villain because maybe they felt that the game needed a villain with a face. I don't know. Whatever the fuck they thought they were doing with Seymour, it didn't work. And it was bad. It was not just bad. It was bad at a very high level. So half of the game with Seymour worked. And I feel comfortable saying that half of the game worked. It worked really well. But... I'm trying to figure out how to word this without raging out, because trust me, when I think of Seymour's second half of Final Fantasy X, I get pissed beyond recognition at what they did. And this is where some of the people really started hating Final Fantasy X. And I'm right on board with them. Oh man, the hate train's coming through at 110 fucking miles an hour, and the front of that train's got fucking fists that's so big and it's ready to go into the asshole that thought it was a good idea to keep pushing Seymour into the game. Yeah, Seymour, it was forced. It wasn't even good story writing for him to keep coming back. Because by the point that he died off, and we learned a little bit more about the inner workings of the Church of Yevon, we learn that he's not going to do the things he says he's going to do. He's not capable of controlling Sin. That's total shit. We know that the summoner Yevon himself has built Sin by the time we get to Xanarkand, and we learn so much that really was far more interesting and would have made a better villain than him. And so, what would have perfected Ten's villains? What would have made a good villain in Final Fantasy X? Well, Seymour worked. He kind of worked up until after the wedding. When he kills all the Ronzo, well, why were you doing that? They threw themselves at me as I killed them one by one. Oh, go fuck yourself. That's childish. That's preschool kid not getting his way and beating up his little toy soldiers that are blocking his path. Or I don't even know how to describe it. It's childish antics. Any dignity that he had out the window at that point. And then we kill him again. And he comes back again inside Sin. He didn't even succeed in what he was trying to do. What was Seymour's goal? Seymour's goal was to hook up with Yuna so he could go as a guardian on Yuna's pilgrimage, so Yuna would offer him up as the sacrifice to turn into the next Sin. Okay? That's what he wanted to do. Well, he fucked that up by killing off Jiskel Guado and then obviously Yuna finding out about it. And he fucked it up further when he failed at the wedding and couldn't kill anyone off. Okay? He is a failure. A big failure. And now you're to force him back into the storyline and give him some kind of point or purpose? You're a fucking asshole. You know what I would have liked to have seen? The summoner Yu Yevon. That's a villain they could have put in. They talked about him in such small smidgens, like really, really tiny smidgens, of this summoner who went insane and created sin because he wanted everybody in the world to die because he enjoyed watching the bloodshed. He enjoyed these things. This is like, they could have rewritten Kefka into this summoner that would have been far more interesting, far more colorful than what we were given. And this is maybe where people get pissed off. And where I support their pissed off in this, because Seymour had potential, but once you axed him off, once they axed him off the way they did twice, the times you kept seeing him just became more and more of a you can't be serious moment, right? Like I sat there the first time I saw him at Mount Gagazet after the wedding scene. I'm like, you can't be fucking serious. I mean, I knew he was around, but I mean, I saw that and I was like, no. He had a moderately honorable villainy like death. Okay, it wasn't a good death, and he didn't do a lot that was great. But this is not gonna make him better. This is gonna make him worse. And then he comes again inside Sin saying he's now in control of Sin, or he's going to be in control of Sin. Oh, fuck you. We know you Yevon's controlling Sin, you asshole. You go fuck yourself in the horse you rode in on. And there are people who defend what he was doing, and I'm sorry. It's bad story writing. You can get a book like, and I got it around here somewhere. Hold on. Right, here's a book that I read in college, Writing Fantasy and Science Fiction and Getting It Published by Brian Stableford. This is Writing Science Fiction and Fantasy, mostly Fantasy, 101. And this is the first book I read out of 26 books about how to write characters and develop characters. This is the 101 for the courses that I took at a prestigious school that I went to. Kind of prestigious, whatever. Okay, so... And obviously, I'm not a major. I was a minor. Anyway, I was getting as a minor, so I didn't have probably the best teachers, but that were available. But whatever. Everything that they did with Seymour after the wedding scene was bad. They've already given us the exposition we need to know about Yu Yevon and all that stuff. And by that point, his purpose and what his goals were never going to happen. They were not realistic. So you're shoehorning this villain thinking he's going to scare the shit out of me, or he's going to intimidate me, and he's not. Not even to the main story he's relevant after that wedding scene. So you gave us this mediocre villain, Winnie the Pooh fuck, and this is the best you could do with him, and then you tried to force him down my throat. I'm sorry. There's nobody running around town wearing a shirt that said, I like Seymour Guado. And the few people that dressed up like that asshole probably did it because their girlfriends wanted to dress up as Yuna, and they didn't want to dress up like Titus. Because you had to choose between two buckets of shit. The only difference was the fucking smell. And they couldn't afford the outfit that was needed for Orin, maybe. Or their buddy dressed up as Orin, so that was already taken. And you didn't want to dress up as Waka, so fair enough. And Yeah, I'm sorry. That's bad story writing. That's how you flunk out of creative writing classes, because that doesn't make any sense. There's no rationale for that. There's no reason to do that. And here's the funny thing. Spira is a pretty dynamic place. It's a good world to do stuff in. It's not the best in the world. It's not the worst. And, Yuna, Lulu, Riku, Orin, Kimari, they were tolerable. They were fine. They would have functioned well in that game. Titus is... and Waka's... I liked him a little more. But then, and Seymour was... I could accept him up to the wedding scene. I could. I really, really could. And then I saw what he did after, and it was just bad. It was so inexcusably bad. So, does it make him the worst Final Fantasy villain? No, it does not. Because he had a redeeming quality. He was mediocre through the first half of the game. The sorceress from Final Fantasy VIII has no redeeming qualities whatsoever at any level. Neither did the sorceress, honestly, in Final Fantasy II. But my point is still very clear, and I'm making a good point. These are realities that people need to check. I mean, is Final Fantasy X a good game? It's better than Final Fantasy XII. Okay, I'll stand by that. It's better than Final Fantasy XII. But it's definitely not one of the top 3 Final Fantasy games. It for everything it does really, really well, it did so many other things really, really badly. And that's unforgivable. To have a villain like that, when you had 2 perfectly good villains as is, you had Sin, who just the fucking presence of Sin was good enough. Well, you didn't need another villain. And then to go as far as to say, oh, we could have had Yu Yevon as a villain too. Oh, fuck you, asshole. Really? You could have had Yu Yevon in there, and you could have done way more than having me kill a fucking floating trilobite at the end of the fucking game? You could have actually given him a presence and a fucking character? Fuck you! That's horrible. Horrible. Lazy. It's lazy. It's bad character writing. And the problem is they should have known better. They should have known better. And, okay, I'm going to get off my rage right now. I'm going to calm down. Let me have some scotch here. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Give me some of that. Oh, baby. Oh, God. Oh, yeah. That's good stuff. That's delicious. Okay. It's calming me down. Oops, shit. Let's drop the glass as loud as humanly possible. Oh, that's good stuff. Oh, yeah. All right, so I'm feeling a little better now. All right, let's move on. Final Fantasy XI. The online... Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, the online games are not bad. They're good if you're into that. And I'm not a huge MMO person, and sorry. I liked Final Fantasy XI over World of Warcraft. I'll say that right now. And I'm going to get condemned for saying that, but I did. Was it the end all of Final Fantasies? No, it was actually pretty good. The stories were intriguing. The game was kind of difficult at first, and once they ironed out a lot of problems in it, it became a little bit more tolerable. But, it is what it is. And it came out on PS2 with a special device so you could play it on the PS2. But you couldn't I don't believe you could ever get the expansions for it. And I think there was even a point where you had to turn in your Final Fantasy X or 11 PS2 disc, and you could get it for the PC, I think, for free or some shit. Anyway, I don't know. I liked it. It was a good MMO, but I'm not a big MMO player, so I'm not going to judge it past its story. I like the story. The characters are forgettable, but it's ultimately a good story. So, and the music's still Uematsu. Hironobu Sakaguchi had moved on, thank God. And for his career to keep going, because it was just, if he pulled out another Final Fantasy X, I would have flown to Japan, gouged out his eyeballs, and skull fucked him to death. I could not. If I saw another Seymour Guado, oh my God, no, I could not survive that, because like I said, I wasn't really happy with 8. 9 was okay. It was good. It was really good. I liked it, but it wasn't anything that made me blow my mind. There were so many other games doing better than them, then it's hard to admit it, but Dragon Quest VIII was better than Final Fantasy X and 9. If you really want something in that world setting, well, Dragon Quest VIII was a phenomenal RPG. Like, Gaia 2 Dual Saga was pretty good. I mean, yeah, it was made by it was published by Fresh Games, which is shit. And yeah, the franchise died after that because, yeah, they chose to publish it under those assholes. And they cut out all the voice acting and decent sound effects and put them in with shit. And cut half the cutscenes out, I think. But it was okay. You know, Lord of the Rings: The Third Age is kind of drawn out, but it is what it is. You know, but there weren't a lot of really, really good RPGs on the PS3. You had Grandia 3, but I'm sorry, Grandia 1 and 2 were way better. Grandia Extreme was shit. And then you had Final Fantasy 12. Look, there are people that like this game, and I'm going to make myself incredibly clear. Square Enix did not know what to do when they got their fucking nuts cut off. They lost the people that made them famous. They did. And how do you recover from that? Well, you get people who did moderately good jobs prior. So they got the jackass that did the Final Fantasy Tactics games and did he also did Vagrant Story. Now, what they neglected to tell him was they should have said to him, "You need to make an original game." They didn't make an original game. They were far from it. Holy fucking horseshits. The guy made a game that takes place in the same world as all of his tactic games and Vagrant Story. I'm not fucking kidding. That's what he did. He made a game, put a Final Fantasy name on it, and connected it to a world that he created. And to be honest with him, that world wasn't that great. Vagrant Story and Final Fantasy Tactics were good. Tactics Advanced and Tactics Advanced 2 were a little quirky. And their stories were significantly weak. And these were the stories with the judges, okay? And the anamorphic creatures. Final Fantasy Tactics was actually really good. I thought the story was really good, so you'd think they'd carry some of that into Final Fantasy 12. They didn't carry some of that at all. In Vagrant Story, the dark story, these two games were very dark and very intense for what they were. And we never saw that writing come out of this guy. We saw Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced writing, and Final Fantasy Tactics is pretty bland. You know, yeah, so is some of the writing in the original Final Fantasy Tactics, War of the Lions, but at least the drama that did the plot itself was fascinating. Whether you like the characters or not is up to you. And I didn't really like all of them as a whole. They had their moments, but the plot itself is very, very good. It was a very solid plot. It was a very good conspiracy kind of drama, where the other two were trying to be that, but not really fully succeeding. So Final Fantasy XII, well, you have the world of Ivalice, which, if that didn't give it away, you know, the world of Ivalice is a very vast world. It is a very interesting world. Don't get me wrong. I'd be lying to you if it wasn't interesting. But those of us who've played Final Fantasy XII all the way through know that they don't exploit that at all. It all takes place in one small area of Ivalice. And if you played all the tactics games and you played Vagrant Story, you kind of get pissed off because you're barely exploring the world of Final Fantasy XII. I've played that game 4 times. And I struggled through it each and every time. I never found it that appealing. The main character, Bosch, not Bosch. Well, Bosch is one of them, but what is it? Van? I don't even remember. They were so forgettable. The only ones I remember were the Bunny Girl and Balthier. And the only reason I remember Balthier is because his name was easy to remember. They were the only characters I gave 2 shits about, and I'm not alone on this. If they made a game about them and it didn't fucking take place in Ivalice, and you got rid of her goofy fuck bunny look, and you put them in a little bit more of a world that wasn't literally ripping off Final Fantasy Tactics and all that other stuff, I would have been happier, and a lot of the other gamers would have been happier too. The battle system, everything was changing so fast. The battle system I didn't like it. It's not a Final Fantasy game to me as far as its gameplay. And I understand what they were doing, and I do support what they were doing. Don't get me wrong. You know, the gameplay isn't bad, but it's not a Final Fantasy game. They could have named it something else, and I would have played it, and I would have had a different perception of it, and I would have been I would have tolerated it. It's not a bad game, but it's not. The story is mediocre at its best. The gameplay is intriguing, but it's not addictive. It doesn't draw you in, nor does it really draw out character personalities. It doesn't add anything to the characters, because you can make the characters all the same if you fucking wanted to. So there's no real life in that. So, they got rid of all the mainstream summons and converted them to these different summons. I'm okay with change, because they're trying to distance themselves as much from the original franchise as possible, because they lost the really good writers. They lost the really good concept guys. I understand why they're doing it, I guess, to try and redo the entire franchise new. It didn't fucking work. It didn't fucking work. And for anyone to say that it did, I think that's a bit naive, and I think that's a bit shallow-minded, and you've obviously not played the other Final Fantasy games and understood them, I think, at the same level, and treated them equally. Treated each game equally. Now, and yes, that's a really harsh statement. There are, like I said, a lot of people who like that game. I'm going to be looked at as the retro guy. I'm not. There were games that came out that did what Final Fantasy 12 did, but did it better. Rogue Galaxy, Kingdom Hearts. It's similar gameplay. They did it better. And their stories were better. They were more interesting. I don't know what else to say. They were better. So I don't know if Final Fantasy 12 tried to emulate them and try to recreate RPGs. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good, and it was trying to borrow. Instead of coming up with an original idea, they just ripped off everything and everyone. And people were okay with that. Some people were okay with that. Ivalice is fine. I'm okay with that because that's Square Enix's own, world, and it is a Final Fantasy world, I guess, that I can accept some of that. But that's like creating a sequel or prequel to Final Fantasy Tactics. You don't do that with a numbered Final Fantasy game. They're not sequels of each other. They're not references necessarily from other Final Fantasy games other than a mere cameo. But the worlds should have never intersected. Now, they did that with the Tactics series, including Vagrant Story, though that game has totally different gameplay. So to do that with Final Fantasy 12 was, to me was kind of lazy. Okay, it was lazy story writing. Oh, I'll just use Ivalice and I'll save the company. No, you used Ivalice and made a boring fuck game. Okay? You did a half-assed job. I don't know why they did a half-assed job, but they did. Okay, you ripped off game mechanics from Rogue Galaxy and Kingdom Hearts. The only difference is you didn't let your characters jump. Boo-hoo-hoo, fuck you, that's stupid. That's, again, I don't know. I mean, like I said, people like this game. I don't understand why they like it. I don't really see the reason. So I won't go further into that game, but if you've never played it, you're not missing much.